So I discovered this interesting article published by Science Magazine in August of 2014, and it goes over this study that was conducted at the Messerli Research Institute at the University of Veterinary Medicine, Vienna, involving lab-raised dogs and wolf packs. And the title of this article is "Wolves Cooperate but Dogs Submit. Study suggests breeding for dependence, not cooperation, may have driven initial dog domestication." So as you know, dominance and dominance hierarchies and the social nature of dogs and canines is what my channel is all about. So this article is just a fascinating and clear demonstration of the fact that dominance does exist, as much as people don't want to acknowledge it. And I posted this article in the Facebook group that I'm in, and people just lost their fucking minds. We'll get to that later, but I wanted to read you to this article because it has some really good information in it. So it says, for dog lovers, comparative psychologists Frederic Range and I think it's Zofia Viarani, I probably butchered the shit out of that, have an unsettling conclusion. Many researchers think that as humans domesticated wolves, they selected for a cooperative nature, resulting in animals keen to pitch in on tasks with humans. But when the two scientists at the Messerli Research Institute at the University of Veterinary Medicine, Vienna, studied lab-raised dogs and wolf packs, they found that wolves were the tolerant, cooperative ones. The dogs, in contrast, form strict, linear dominance hierarchies that demand obedience from subordinates. Range explained last week at the Animal Behavior Society meeting at Princeton University. As wolves became dogs, she thinks, they were bred for the ability to follow orders and to be dependent on human masters. Now, if you watched my previous video on Christoph Klugston, he referred me to Ray Coppinger's work, and his work actually suggests that there's no evidence to prove that dogs came from wolves, and that wolves may have in fact come from dogs, and dogs seem to have a closer genetic lineage to coyotes. But that's the best evidence we have so far. So, but really, the chicken or the egg, it's irrelevant, because this study involves wolves and dogs. So it goes on. Range and Viarani developed their new portrayal of dogs and wolves by giving a series of tests to socialize packs of mixed breed dogs and wolves, 4 packs of each species, containing anywhere from 2 to 6 animals each. The scientists raised all the animals from about 10 days old at the Wolf Science Center in Game Park Erzbrunn, Austria, living with them 24 hours a day until they were introduced to pack life, so they were accustomed to humans. So they raised these dogs, and they were lab raised. So they had them from when they were puppies, right? So it's a controlled environment, right? They had 24-hour supervision of these dogs and wolves. So they knew these animals. And this is the difference between a study like this and, say, the bullshit proposed by the behavioral organizations, which deny the existence of dominance. They don't do these sorts of studies, at least that I found. It's all survey studies. But let's continue. Oh, and I'd like to point out the tagline of this photo. It says, "Wolves dine together, but dogs have a strict hierarchy and expect to be told what to do." Yes, I would agree. But the article continues. Range and her colleagues tested the dogs and wolves' tolerance for their fellow pack members with a mealtime challenge. The researchers paired a high-ranking dog with a low-ranking pack buddy and set out a bowl of food, then gave the same challenge to a pair of wolves. In every matchup, the higher-ranking dog monopolized the food, Range told the meeting. It's what they would call resource guarding, right? Again, this is just a dominance hierarchy playing out, not resource guarding, right? The stronger dog takes control of the food and tells the other dog to fuck off. But in the wolf test, both the high and low-ranking animals had access, and both were able to chow down at the same time. This is more of a cooperative thing rather than a dominating thing. At times, the more dominant wolves were mildly aggressive towards their subordinates, but a lower-ranking dog won't even try when paired with a top dog. This has been my experience too, Range said. They don't dare to challenge. My previous 2 dogs, my girl was the submissive one, and my boy was extremely dominant. She never challenged him. And my boy never challenged me. As dominant as he was, we established that early on. Now, I'll tell you a story. The day I adopted my boy, he attempted to dominate me and my girl. And I made it very clear that he was not going to come in and push either one of us around. So I gained his respect that day. He tried to take food out of her mouth. I got it back from him. I set that boundary there with him. He was growling at her over food. I made sure to let him know that this was not acceptable. And then he went to try to pee on my bed because he didn't like the fact that I was telling him what to do over the food. Well, that was the last day he ever tried to pee on my bed. And I remember there was, this is months later, but I brought a dog into work with this beautiful, beautiful pit bull. I think it was probably the biggest pit bull I've ever seen. I think he was a mix actually, but had to be at least a 100-pound dog. One of the most beautiful dogs, I think. He was jet black. It's like a jaguar. And him and my boy did not get along. They both would fight each other. And I remember there's one day where they were attempting to fight each other, and I got in the middle to break it up. And my boy actually lunged to bite him, and he bit my arm instead. And once he realized realized he was biting me and not the dog, he let go. My boy would never bite. As dominant as he was, and as much of a killer as he was, he never, ever thought to disrespect me like that. So I've seen these things play out firsthand with my own dogs. There is, in fact, a pecking order established. It's a mentality between everybody involved, dog and human. But let's continue. They go on to say, wolves also beat the hounds on tests that assess whether the canids were able to follow the gaze of their fellows to find food. They are very cooperative with each other, and when they have a disagreement or must make a group decision, they have a lot of communication or, quote, talk first, Range said. This was not true for the center's dog packs. For even the smallest transgression, a higher ranked dog may react aggressively towards one that is subordinate. Now, this is my favorite part. This is the cherry on top. Range and Virani suspect that the relationship between dogs and humans is hierarchical, with humans as top dogs rather than cooperative as in wolf packs. The notion of dog-human cooperation needs to be reconsidered, Range said, as well as the, quote, hypothesis that domestication enhanced dogs' cooperative abilities. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many problems with aggressive dogs, reactive dogs, dogs that are disrespectful, pushy, don't listen. This is like a rampant issue. I get more calls for dog aggression than anything. And so this notion that domesticated dogs, they're not hierarchical or there's no dominance and we've bred this out of is bullshit. Instead, our ancestors bred dogs for obedience and dependency. Quote, it's not about having a common goal, Range said. It's about being with us, but without conflict. We tell them something and they obey. I agree, but in order to get that level of respect, you need to go through some conflict. This is the thing that I don't understand about people that have such an issue with this notion, and we'll get to some of that in a minute here. But to finish this out, this is the best part. I love it. James Serpell is an ethologist. He says it's wonderful work, and he's an ethologist at the University of Pennsylvania. He says, but it's not what the dog training community wants to hear. You can't say the word dominance around them. Does dominance exist as a phenomenon in dogs? The answer is clearly yes, Serpell says, although he notes that there are breed differences. Other researchers, for example, have shown that when in packs, poodles and Labrador retrievers are more aggressive than our Malamutes and German Shepherds. Very interesting observation. That's a whole other can of worms, but let's get into the response. I posted this in, as I mentioned before, a group that I'm in, and people got a little butthurt over the results of this study. And, people constantly make this assertion that, oh, well, dominance is not interspecies, or humans cannot be dominant with dogs, and dogs are not trying to be dominant with people. And I don't understand where this comes from. If a dog tries to bite you for getting near its food the same as it would bite another dog, then where is, I don't understand why you would say it's fear-based when it comes to the person, but it's dominance with the dog. Doesn't make any fucking sense. The dog's gonna bite you or the dog for the same reason. It's trying to tell both of you to fuck off because it sees you as a subordinate. And Serpell is correct. You can't say dominance with, quote, dog trainers. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to believe it exists. They don't even factor it into the equation when they're working with a dog. And this is why I'm constantly trying to get the message out that these are not training issues. This is a social phenomenon. You want to work through something like resource guarding quickly? Address it from a dominance hierarchy perspective rather than a fucking training perspective. You'll get results much quicker and they will be long lasting because now you've built respect from the dog. It's time we stop denying reality and accept these things for basic truths of the earth that we live on and the nature of the animals we share space with. And this is just how Mother Nature works in general. This is an animal thing. Let's throw this idea of training in the fucking garbage and start acknowledging that these are social creatures, we're social creatures, and we should approach these issues from a social perspective. So let's get into a couple of the responses people made when I posted this article. This individual, Diana Castor, she's like this force-free. She's all about neuroscience and all this emotional bullshit. She says whether it exists or not is not really important. What matters most is whether you know how to appropriately read a social situation. It's pretty sad when an intelligent human species isn't capable to see more than dominant or submissive in their dogs. Pretty darn sad when you limit yourself to this. And I said it's everything when understanding dogs' social dynamics. This is the foundation of understanding the dogs we live with. And this is my point, is if the foundation of everything that you build your knowledge base off of is fucking flawed or incorrect, then everything beyond that foundation is fucked. So I'm trying to lay the foundation correctly here. If people could just, and so I said, if people could just accept this basic truth of reality, we could see things for what they truly are, and this community wouldn't be such a mess. Dogs are predatory animals which see things in terms of strength and weakness. So all that matters is that we understand things from the dog's perspective, not put our emotional garbage onto them. So she replies and says, and this is where you were wrong, all of it. And this is the thing I understand. These people, they insist you're wrong, and they don't provide anything to disprove you, to back up their shit. And so I said, prove it. I've been to your YouTube channel. You don't have anything to back up your claims. And I said, the last time I asked you for proof, you showed a video of you with a deer. Didn't inspire much confidence. Then I said, how can you appropriately read a social situation if you fail to account for the role of a dominance hierarchy? She replies, that's because 1, I don't feel the need to brag, and 2, I don't don't set my clients up for failure just to get video material. I don't need to prove anything. Of course, they never need to prove anything, right? They'll insist you're wrong, but they don't need to prove shit. Not to you and not to anybody else. I guess it's somewhat of an ego thing. And then she says, it did to the deer. I don't know what she means. Your opinion didn't really matter. Your opinion about dominance and submission doesn't matter. How do you not understand that? It's not about you. I don't know what any of this means or why this is relevant. Why would you limit yourself to just dominance or submission when there's so much more to know about dogs? And no, dominance, submission is not the foundation of everything else. Says somebody who doesn't have anything to show for their shit. But it doesn't really matter what I say here because you are very set in your ways. Yeah, because I acknowledge reality for what it is. Yeah. So good luck to you. I just hope that others on here will be a bit more open to learning. I'm not going to go through this whole exchange. I have everything here for you. You can pause the video and read it if you want. It just gets more and more ridiculous. But there's this individual, Wim, I'm not even going to try to say his last name, but he chimes in and he made a response to one of my other posts, which I'll share in a minute. But this individual is also, he claims to have been a former vet behaviorist, which we know how much credibility they have. But what's interesting is at the end of this thread, he links some pictures from a book that the individual cited in this article. I guess he wrote, James Serpell. He shows some pages from this book to, I guess, I don't know, he was trying to maybe say that I'm wrong, but Serpell actually makes the same assertion that dominance is in fact a thing. But I think he was trying to say it's not relevant because Serpell asserts that dominance between dogs and humans isn't real and that dogs don't try to dominate us, even though the researchers who conducted this study did assert that maybe we should reconsider this idea that dogs and humans, that this whole idea of a dominance hierarchy, that humans are included in that. But I think the point he was trying to make here is that this idea of dominance should not be put out there because it's dangerous, and that people, in the past have used dominance as like a means to be heavy-handed with dogs. And, it quotes Cesar Millan in the book, and so on and so forth. But whether it's dangerous or not, it doesn't matter because it's true. So we're essentially trying to deny reality and shove this thing aside because of the potential outcomes it may have, when in reality this is the truth and we should accept it and figure out how to utilize this thing correctly so we can live a balanced, harmonious life with our dog. But this is another individual trying to tell me I'm wrong. Now, I made another post about resource guarding and he responded to it and tried to tell me that, oh, this approach wouldn't work with real resource guarding dogs, whatever that means. And I said, hey, this post was about prevention. This is how you prevent resource guarding, or what they call resource guarding. He tries to tell me that it's a genetic thing and you can't, and he tried to say, if you want an actual source on resource guarding, check out this book, Mine, by so on and so forth, rather than said what I had put in the post was bullshit. And because I said, well, if this book's so great, how come you couldn't solve your own dog's issues with the shit in this book? Because he claims, it was counter conditioning and so on and so forth, and now my dog lets me get near the food bowl. But he later, he exposes himself and says, but my pug and strange people can't get near the dog when food's around. So you didn't really solve the problem, did you? You're just another person in a long line of people to try and tell me I'm wrong, and yet you yourself still have issues. Funny enough, we won't acknowledge a dominance hierarchy, but your dog still wants to tell the pug and strange people to fuck off, which the hierarchy is right in front of you, and you don't want to acknowledge it. These trainers out here, these people that claim to work with dogs are fucking ridiculous. Let's get it through our thick heads that this shit is real and stop ignoring reality.